Welcome to JJ Biz Consult, your go-to for business insights, marketing strategies, and expert advice. Whether you're an entrepreneur or a professional looking for actionable tips, you're in the right place. With the 2024 US presidential election just around the corner, early voting is already making headlines. Over 14 million ballots have been cast nationwide, and the data is revealing some fascinating trends. What does this early voting surge mean for the final outcome? And how are voters across the country shaping the election before November 5th? Let's dive into the numbers. Early voting is now an essential part of the American election process. Almost every state offers some form of early voting, and in 2024, Alabama kicked things off as early as September 11th. While this year's early voting numbers might not reach the historic highs of 2020, one thing is clear: millions of voters are making their voices heard before Election Day. Let's take a closer look at the data. First, who is voting early? Well, the trend shows that early voters tend to be older and more consistent in their voting habits. In fact, those aged 65 and older make up 41% of early voters. Meanwhile, younger voters are lagging behind, with only 10% of early votes coming from the 18 to 29 age group. And when it comes to gender, women are leading the way. 54.8% of early voters are women, compared to 44.7% men. This mirrors trends from previous elections, where women have been more likely to vote early. Now, let's talk about race. 71.6% of early voters so far are white, but black voters represent a strong 19.5%, and other minority groups are showing up too. Interestingly, states like Michigan are seeing an increase in early voting among black voters compared to 2020. Okay, but what about the candidates? Historically, Democrats have been big on early voting, and this year is no exception. Vice President Kamala Harris holds a lead among early voters compared to former President Donald Trump, following a similar pattern from past elections. But here's something new. Republicans are increasingly embracing early voting, especially in key battleground states like Georgia and Virginia. State by state, we're seeing some interesting trends. Georgia broke records with over 310,000 votes cast on the first day of early voting. North Carolina is seeing strong participation from both parties. And in Wisconsin, in-person early voting is just about to kick off, with campaigns ramping up to mobilize voters. So far, more Democrats have cast early ballots, 4.5 million to be exact, compared to 3.1 million Republicans. But make no mistake, the GOP is catching up. New Republican-led initiatives are pushing early voting as a strategic move in key states. With so many ballots already cast, the focus now shifts to those who haven't voted yet. How will these early trends shape the final results? As Election Day approaches, early voting is a powerful indicator of what's to come. Stay tuned as we track these developments and get ready for what could be one of the most exciting elections in recent history. While early voting offers valuable insights, it's important to remember that it's not always a clear predictor of the final outcome. As CNN has analyzed, predictions based on early voting have missed the mark in past elections. Let's take a closer look at their analysis on how early voting trends can sometimes be misleading.
Audience for anything. I beg of you, don't read anything into any of these trends. Please, every 4 years we do the same gosh darn thing. Look, here's the bottom line. An election day vote counts the same as an early in-person vote or a mail vote. We know from the polling and we know through history that Kamala Harris is very likely going to win that mail vote. We know the early in-person vote is going to be very, very close. A point lead in this poll. I can find a few polls, in fact, where Trump is ahead in that. But we know that Donald Trump is going to crush the election day vote, and it doesn't matter when the vote is cast, they all count the same. One vote counts for one vote, whether it's cast today or whether it is cast on November 5th, John.
And that goes for people looking at this from both sides. There's nothing magical about an election day vote versus a vote that's mailed in early. There are trends, though, that you can compare when you're talking about early voting, mail voting, in-person voting.
You can try. You could certainly try. But remember where we were 4 years ago? There was a pandemic. We were in the midst of the COVID pandemic. John and I couldn't stand next to each other 4 years ago. The bottom line is this. There's no discernible baseline in most of these states because in 2020, 69% of the vote was cast early, in person, or by mail. This year, we're looking at maybe about 52%. So how are you supposed to compare this year to 4 years ago? And more than that, you know, you might say, okay, all that record early in-person voting, right? But here's the deal. Even the components of that early vote are going to change because the mail vote is going to be way down. Here's a projection, 23% for this year compared to 43% 4 years ago. The early in-person vote could actually go up. That's what the NBC News poll is suggesting, 29% versus 26% 4 years ago. But the overall complexion and the overall number of folks who are going to cast a ballot before Election Day is going to go way down. But the way they're going to do it is very likely going to change. It just makes it impossible. I don't know how anyone could compare this to anything, to be honest. Maybe they know something better than I do, John.
The important thing to say is people are voting. People are voting, and that's a good thing. But you have one final warning.
Yeah. A quote before Trump's 2016 win, comparing party registration trends from 2012. Some political scientist said, early voting predicts who wins. This is good news for Democrats. I don't think Hillary Clinton won that election, John. Do you?
No, early voting, not a good predictor. If you run a campaign, I will say this. If you're running a campaign, you like early voting because it's, you know.
You bank the vote.
Exactly. It's there. It's done. You can turn your focus to someone else, maybe a persuadable voter there. But in terms of predicting who's going to win, no, please.
Please, please. I'm begging you. Please, please.
Don't make Harry sad.
Want more insights on the 2024 election? We're planning to bring you exclusive breaking news and exciting insights leading up to Election Day on November 5th. Don't miss out. Subscribe now and stay tuned for updates before the polls. Like, share, and subscribe for more election news and in-depth data breakdowns. See you in the next video.